Will it take lessons, or do you need to go and buy new equipment to improve your iron game? That is a no move. By picking this particular iron, I got closer. It's still not optimal, but I got a lot closer. And that customer would be so happy to walk out the door and say, I got 20, 25 yards longer distance on my 7-iron. Golfers, welcome back to the channel. I'm Thomas Campbell. I'm a teaching professional and also club fitter. And I have the opportunity to not only club fit golfers, but also help them improve their game through lessons. It is quite the debate at times. And I think the first thing you have to consider is whether it's going to be lessons or game improvement by putting some time in. It comes down to it. Do you have time to improve your golf game? Versus, can you just buy your golf game with equipment, and are you happy with just some of the progress that you're able to make? Well, I'm going to go over iron trajectory. So typically what I see with golfers is there's two different types of players that need help. There's either the flipper. So what I see with the flipper is they try and help the ball up in the air. They'll try and help it up, and what they'll do is they'll add loft to the club at impact, and their hands will flip, essentially. What typically we see is the hands get to the ball after the club head, and that is a no-no. When you're hitting an iron, you definitely want the club head to be kind of behind where the hands are. So you want the hands to get to the ball before the club head, because the ball's on the ground. The other type of person that I see is the golfer that really delofts the ball. The ball does not fly very high and they have a very steep attack angle. Well, for these golfers, it might take lessons, or it might just take getting fit for the right clubs. And we're talking about the right amount of loft on the club. So generally speaking, a flipper will need to play an iron that has less static loft on an iron. Or we need to teach that golfer how to compress the ball better. Typically, what we want to see out of a golfer is we want to see that ball launching around about, with this 7-iron, around about 17 to 20 degrees, depending on your speed. If you're a faster golfer, you're going to want to launch it on the lower side. If you're a slower, maybe don't swing quite as fast, you're going to want to launch the ball a little bit on the higher side. If that launch angle is 25 degrees, or your dynamic loft is, call it over 30 degrees plus 35 degrees, that is way too high, and you're leaving some significant distance on the table for the amount of speed that you present. So I really love using this ping optimal set makeup chart. And this really kind of focuses on what we're talking about exactly, based on what your club speed and what the ideal launch angle is and what the ideal landing angle with an iron is. And I'm using this a lot when I'm taking a look at someone's speed and what we're typically seeing. So a lot of the times I might fit a golfer into, call it more loft on the golf club or less loft on the club versus what the actual stated loft on particular irons is. The other type of golfer I mentioned is the De-Lofter. So someone that will kind of come in really steep. That's when we actually might need to add loft to the specs of an iron. I might order irons, call it 2 degrees weak in loft, or even 3 degrees a week in loft. It's not quite as common as the golfer that flips at it. Let's face it, the higher handicap golfers do flip at it a little bit more and try and help the ball up in the air. And that's why game improvement irons are more beneficial to help you pick up some distance. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to do my best at trying to make a swing where I'm flipping at it. And you will notice that I will not be hitting the distance that I typically hit with my irons. We're talking about swinging at the same speed, but not even getting the ball to go 150 yards when I'm flipping at it. I'm talking about 37, 38 degrees of loft presented. When dynamically, I typically deliver about 24 to 26. I'm also going to do some shots where I really overcompress or de-loft the club. And then what we're going to do is we're going to compare whether you should, through technique, improve your trajectory, or whether it's going to be club fitting that's going to actually help improve your trajectory. Please subscribe to this channel. Let's do some testing. While talking about whether club fitting or lessons is going to be better off, we're going to focus on two things. The first one is what I call the flipper move. So generally speaking, we're talking about a golfer that at impact, what happens is you'll see they try and help the ball up in the air, and the club head will get to the ball before the hands. That is a no move. We don't want to do that. We want to let the loft get the ball up in the air. And we want our hands to kind of come through and be before the club head at impact, especially when the ball is on the ground. If it was a driver, it would be different. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit some shots where I'm going to exaggerate the typical flipper move that I see. Then we'll just take a look at dynamic loft and launch angle, and especially distance. I'm going to swing between 80 and 90 miles an hour, but it's not going to be my typical 7-iron distance. So on that particular shot there, the dynamic loft was 37 degrees. So typically I deliver the club with around about 24 to 26 degrees with the dynamic loft on a 7-iron. I am playing the Callaway Apex TCB irons. The stated loft on this 7-iron is 34 degrees. So I added 3 degrees of loft on that one. And what you'll notice there is the launch angle was at 26 degrees. Very high launch angle when I try to help the ball up in the air. And I'm going to hit it thin all day. That's way low on the face. Angle of attack is up. That's not very good contact there. Yeah, so loft again, 37.3. Launch was a little lower because I hit it low on the face, but still way too high. See if I can get a crisp shot while exaggerating the feeling of flipping the club. That's low on the face again. About 37 degrees on the dynamic loft. So once again, I'm adding 3 degrees of loft. And you'll notice almost 90 mile an hour club speed. But the ball only carried 140 yards. Do one more here. Yeah, that's just not going very far. Low on the face. So I'm going to give you a little secret here. If you flip at it, kind of coming through, what you'll see is the club's going to be more like this. Well, if we put the ball on the ground, and what happens is if we move the club shaft back, you're going to hit it low on the face all the time. But if we go the other way, we push this forward, this golf ball actually rises up the face. So that's why it's so important to compress the ball. However, we're talking about whether lessons or club fitting can help us in this scenario. So in this scenario, we have two options. We either need to learn how to compress the ball a little bit better, or say you're kind of a golfer that you just want to go out and get some better clubs that fit your particular swing. We're going to need a club that's got less loft on it. So I would particularly choose a game improvement iron. This is still a 7-iron. So for example, the Mizuno Hot Metal has 28 degrees stated loft on it. You'll see here on the fitting head it says 28 degrees of loft on it. So that is 6 degrees less than what I typically play. So that should be able to get the launch angle and the dynamic loft down. Let's see if we can do that. Okay, I'm going to make the exact same move I was making with my typical iron, but now we've got a club that's got a little less loft on it. So that one, magic. The dynamic loft was 32 degrees. Still not optimal, but check out that carry distance. Still the same club speed, right around about 90 miles an hour. Dynamic loft was 31.6, and the launch angle was a couple of degrees lower as well at 22. So as I mentioned, still not optimal, but a lot more optimal than before. All right, so that one, yeah, same thing. Dynamic loft at 30, still more optimal than before, and you'll see about 170 yards, 160 going 169. Launch is a little bit lower, and the dynamic loft is lower. Let's hit one more. I hung back on that one. Yep, hit that one a lot better there. That one when the loft was 28, dynamic loft, and the launch angle was 21. So a little bit better. However, I mentioned there's going to be two ways to do this. So, and I love using this chart because it's a great example. So the Ping optimal set makeup chart that I use in fittings, they're going to say for a 7-iron, for a golfer that swings 80 to 90 miles an hour, for a mid-trajectory golfer, you want to launch the ball around 16 to 18 degrees and have a landing angle of 41 to 45. A high trajectory golfer, launch angle will be 17 to 20 with a landing angle around about 45 to 50 degrees. You'll notice by picking this particular iron, I got closer. It's still not optimal, but I got a lot closer, and that customer will be so happy to walk out the door and say, I got 20-25 yards longer distance on my 7-iron. So there's still room for improvement, but this is one way. The other way is going to be through compressing the ball. So I mentioned when you hit a 7-iron, you actually want to have your hands in front of the club head at impact when you deliver the club to the ball. You don't want the club head to get to the ball before the hands. You want to be more in this position where the shaft's leaning forward a touch. So we're going to work on compressing the ball with the same kind of club speed, and we'll pay attention to these numbers. So the only thing I'm going to change here is I'm going to make my normal swing, but what I'm going to be feeling is at impact, I'm transitioning my weight onto my left side. So transitioning my weight onto my left side and allowing this shaft here to be leaning forward at impact. And that one I got very heavy, but what you'll notice is I really didn't lose any distance because the dynamic loft was down. So that was 24 degrees on the dynamic loft. Wasn't a very good strike. We'll get there, but you'll notice it went significantly farther than when I was flipping at it. Alright, that was a better swing there. So on that one there, the dynamic loft was 26, and you'll notice the carry was 170. And the launch angle was 17.5. So typically what I like to see out of my golfers is if you take the lofted on the golf club, for example, Apex TCB 7-iron has 34 degrees of stated loft, and you cut that in half. So 50% is 17 degrees is the ideal launch angle. Well, that was 17.5, so that was pretty good. So that would give us the optimal trajectory where the ball would come into the green and stop. It's not going to go way up and come down, or it's not going to go too flat. That was ideal. Let's hit one more here. That one was not a very good strike again. I think I've been flipping at the club a little too much here. Let's see one more. But you still notice it's still carried further than when I was flipping at before. There we go. That was a better strike. Yep, so that carried 175. Dynamic loft at 22. And the launch angle was 15. So that was a little bit more forward at impact. So there's two ways about this. The first option you've got is to do a club fitting and get a club that's going to have a lot less stated loft on it. If you're a golfer that wants to put in a little bit more work, then we would work on compressing the ball. But it's going to depend on what your expectations are and whether you actually want to practice or you just want to buy some clubs that can perform better for you. So the answer here is you could go either way. You'll notice, I'm going to bring up the numbers just so you can see that we didn't really pick up much more either way. So here are the numbers. So what you can see is when I was flipping at the club, you will notice that I lost significant ball speed. So you can see 104 versus 116 with the hot metal or when I was compressing the ball a little better. What you'll notice is the ball was launching higher with the flipper move, 23 degrees. I was still flipping at it with the hot metal, but it launched a little bit lower. But when I compressed the ball a little bit better, you notice the launch angle went down. What's very interesting here is regardless of what option we chose, whether it's through lessons or whether it's through club fitting, you'll see the carry distance was 165 with both and 140 as a flipper. So we've picked up 25 yards regardless of what option we chose. I did, however, keep in the misses when I was compressing the ball. There were a couple of shots where the ball carried 175, but I kept up every shot just to show averages. Okay, so that's the flipper. We don't want to be a flipper. We want to compress the ball. The next one we're going to look at is a golfer that over compresses the ball. Okay, so if you over compress the ball, or what I would call maybe you're a de-lofter. So at impact, what happens is you're just way too far forward. Maybe you hit down on it really, really steep, and your hands are just really, really far forward. We don't present much loft on the club. So I'm going to hit a couple of those shots here, the best of my ability. So what you'll notice is that ball really hit low on the screen. The dynamic loft was 19 degrees, so it's very, very low. The launch angle was 12, so very, very low. Angle of attack was 10, way too steep. I hit it good. I'm not going to lie, I actually hit it pretty good. But the descent angle was 39, so that was too low, especially for a golfer swinging about 90 miles an hour. I already talked about the ideal descent angle around that 45 to 50 degree mark. So that was an example of too low of a ball flight. Let's do a couple more. So this would be a great shot to hit in the wind though. If you're keeping it low in the wind, that ball is going to stay out of the wind and it's not going to balloon up in the air. And you can see that the ball goes far. It goes far total distance. So the ball is going to roll out a lot more. So that one, yeah, dynamic loft around 20. It's a little too low. Launch at 12. Let's hit one more. Alright, so yeah. Very, very low. Dynamic loft 18. Attack angle down 11. I can tell this actually kind of hurts as I'm hitting down on a mat. So in this scenario, the first thing I would do is I would move to a club or I would probably fit someone into a club that has more loft on it. So in this example, I'm actually already at a club that's got 34 degrees loft. So this is Callaway Apex TCB. I'm lucky enough, I do have some fitting components with me here. So I've got the TaylorMade P7 CB. Typically, this has 34 degrees of loft on it, but the fitting head that I've got this moved to 2 degrees weak. So this club's going to play at 36, not 34. So we're finding a way to tweak the clubs as much as we can. Typically, I would hope that someone wouldn't overcompress quite as much as that I'm showing there. But this is going to be a way to get you in a little better spot. The second way would be maybe ball position, so that would be through technique. But let's see how the P7CB performs with 36 degrees of loft. And I will say, when I club fit, I'm always looking at launch angle. I'm always looking at dynamic loft, and I'm always looking at landing angle. And a lot of the times I might order a iron for a player with 1 or 2 degrees more loft. So call it 2 degrees strong or 2 degrees weak or 1 degree weak. Maybe even up to 3, but it's harder to go more than 3 because it's just harder for the manufacturers to send us or build that for us. But this is a club that's 2 degrees weak than what we typically would see. Didn't quite hit that one very good. I still tried to overcompress that, but I got a little heavy. But what we'll notice is the loft went up. So loft went to 23.5 and the launch went up to 14.6. See if I hit a better strike. Alright, so that was a better strike there. So loft was 21, so it was a little higher. And the launch angle was 13. So a little bit more higher launch and a little bit more loft. Let's do one more. All right, so definitely still try to have my the shaft leaning forward. 22 degrees of loft. So what we're seeing here is the stated loft on the iron. The fact that it's 2 degrees weak is helping us out. So in this scenario, if a golfer delivers the club or hits the ball too low and that landing angle is not high enough, that's when we're going to want to go up in loft with the irons. And typically we order clubs with more loft. For example, in this case, it would be 2 degrees weak. The other option would be, coming back to my iron, could be playing around with ball position with the player. So maybe you could try and move the ball position a little further forward in the stance. That could be possibly a way. So I'm going to try and move the ball position forward and also kind of make that same move and see what happens. So if you typically have your ball position back in your stance, you'll notice what happens to the golf shaft. The golf shaft is going to be leaning forward if the ball is too far back. Gradually, what's going to happen if you move it slowly, the shaft will be more straight up and down, and that's going to present more loft on the club. So in this scenario, I'm just going to move the ball position significantly further forward in my stance, and I'm still going to make this really not comfortable move at all, where I'm trying to de-loft the club a little too much, but we'll see what happens. Yeah, that's significantly higher on the launch angle. So that was 26 degrees. That was pretty good. 19. So I have the ball position kind of way up here on my front foot, just to exaggerate it. And I'm still making this move where I'm having my hands go too far forward at impact. That actually felt pretty good. Yeah, dynamic loft 25. So if you're a golfer that maybe launches the ball too low, your options are, I need irons that have less loft on them. Sorry, you might need irons that have more loft on them statically, or you could play around the ball position. Maybe move that ball position significantly further forward. What happens when you do that also, your attack angle is going to get significantly better. You'll notice when I move that forward, I was only hitting down on it 7 versus the double digits to what we were seeing before, but I was still making that move on the shaft lane. So these are 2 scenarios. We're talking about the importance of whether we should get club fit and we should buy new equipment for our swing, or if we should take lessons. I think this is a great example of finding the optimal trajectory for a 7-iron or any kind of iron alone. You can do it through club fitting, or you can do it through making swing changes. It's just going to come down to whether, one, you have the time to put in, maybe you have access to an instructor that's going to help you get the ball in the more optimal trajectory, or maybe you don't have the time. Maybe you're just like, I want new clubs. I want the clubs to fit me for my golf swing the way it is, and I'm not going to probably see significant changes. If you don't put in the work, you definitely won't see significant changes, and that's where club fitting will probably outrule lessons. Hope you love this content. Thanks for watching.